What's up, y'all? Welcome to another episode of the Two Man Game with your hosts, me, Cone. We've also got Ryan, who is incredibly sunburnt at the moment. Ryan, how are you doing?
I prefer the term sun-kissed or rosy, but
Mm-hmm.
I know you and I
It's
have
burnt.
very
You are burnt.
different. We have very different opinions on sunburn. When I get sunburn, it's like I can feel a little toastiness coming off my skin, but like it feels good, and I usually have a pretty good tan after like a day or two. My man Cone over here, who's as blood related to me as it gets, he if he gets sunburn, it is a very painful 3 days of aloe and agony.
Yeah, no, I can't. I can't do sunburns. I don't tan. I just get fried in the sun. Like, I don't know why I got different genes from you, and even our sister. Like, she gets tan. Ryan gets tan. I don't. I just stay extremely pale and get fried, and I look like a tomato for a little bit. So, not on the sunburn train, but good to hear that it's not hurting
Yeah.
you too
I,
much.
I spent I spent most of the day today at the beach. I hit the gym. I spent a lot of time outside today, so it was a really nice Sunday, honestly. And I have to be at work at 7 in the morning, and we're recording this at like 9:30. So if there's any yawn at the end of this podcast, I promise Connor's not boring me. It's just been a long day, man. But
It's
I'm
been a
ready to talk
long
some
past
hoops.
few days, like
What's
with
up?
free agency. It's been a long past few days, I think, with free
Oh, I
agency
know you
and
were beat.
the
We were
trade.
trying to
Oh
record
yeah,
yesterday, and you were like, I want to, but I'm just so tired, man.
man, I was up till 5 a.m. making my first like free agency breakdown video because I talked for 34 minutes about every single move that happened. And I did forget one. I looked back. I forgot to talk about O'Shea Brissett to the Celtics.
I saw that in your
Thankfully,
comments.
no. Oh, someone did. I was gonna say I
One
didn't think
comment,
anyone
'cause I went and read
commented.
your comments, and one person mentioned it.
Well, I almost got all of them, but yeah, so I was up super late. I was also, I did a couple of BR streams the past couple of mornings. I did two the past, each of the past 2 days. So yeah, I was kind of exhausted last night. So we're recording this after day 3 of free agency, which I think is a good time because most of the big names have been wrapped up at this point. We're going to go ahead and talk about our biggest winners and losers of free agency. But first, we're also then, going to go into some underrated signings, the best free agents remaining, some talking about extensions. So all that is going to come. But I do think we have to begin with the Damian Lillard trade request. It's finally happened after forever. There's been all the rumors, about will Dame request out, won't he? The Blazers at the beginning of free agency only signed Jeremy Grant to a massive deal, which I think we both agreed was a big overpay for Jeremy Grant. Like, he's good, but $160 million, which is the first max contract given out of free agency going to Jeremy Grant, just never really made sense. So not much happens on day 1 for them. And then by day 2, Dame requests a trade around like noon Eastern time. So he's moving on to somewhere else. And there have been some suitors that have been put out there, but kind of my initial reaction is I'm just glad it's over. Like, we don't have to hear any more about Dame should request a trade. Like, is he going to run from the grind? And Dame going on podcasts and interviews talking about how I want to be in Portland. I'm not running from the grind. And I want to put it out there. I don't blame Dame at all for requesting a trade. I think it's in the best interest of both sides to go ahead and move on from this situation. I know a lot of people have kind of likened it to this. It's like a bad breakup. Like, you see two people who just like, you've got these friends who are on again, off again, and you're like, they clearly need to separate, and yet they still keep going back to each other. Finally, the breakup is happening. A couple of destinations being listed, but what are your like initial reactions to the Dame news?
I think even before like thinking about Dame, I immediately thought of the Jeremy Grant signing, and I'm just like, what in the actual heck?
He got his
I can,
friend paid. He waited.
I can just imagine like the Blazers are like, all right, Dame, we got Jeremy Grant locked up. We're gonna try to make some polls. There's Harden rumors. There's a couple other players that want out. We can go around the edges. Make some deals here. And James like, nah, guys, I'm good. I'm out of
Yeah,
here. I
I'm
know I
done.
posted the meme of the Fresh Prince scene where he goes, we, and then he like walks out the door laughing. That's what I kind of said, is like Jeremy Grant's like, we're back, Dame, let's do this. And Dame's like, nah, man. Or like the Magic Johnson meme where he's like, I'm not gonna be there.
Exactly. Yeah,
But
he's
I
dipping.
mean, it's like you said, man, it's about time. I said the same thing with Bradley Beal. It was just like so annoying. It was just like that cycle. It was like Bradley Beal's balling out. Bradley Beal's team sucks. Bradley Beal wants out. Bradley Beal says he's not running from the grind. Bradley
Yeah.
Beal's in trade room. It was just like, over and over again, a cycle. And it was kind of the same thing with Dame. I know people have been joking that like there's been like this trade, domino thing with like John Collins, how like John Collins have been in trade rumors for like 5 years. And it's like he's finally been traded. Everyone's like, all right, now it's Miles Turner. But it's the same with like Dame and Beal, man. I swear every offseason, it's like, is this the year Dame's gone? Is this the year Beal's gone? But
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, man. We've both agreed the Portland Trailblazers need to blow this thing to the ground. and this is the best way to do it. It's just really interesting with the market because I don't think there's really any clear suitors for like, and this kind of bleeds into Harden too. There's just not a lot of clear suitors right now for superstars. I feel like I knew the new CBA makes it hard. The draft makes it hard because some of these guys just got signed. It's just there's a lot of kind of like weird situations right now. And I think some teams also don't want to give up on their young talent. And then there's the Blazers who don't value certain heroes that might join their roster.
Did you see that Tyler Hero took a Miami Heat guard out of his bio and changed his header and everything?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, he did that, which is understandable because I feel like every time there's Miami trade rumors, it's Tyler
It's always Hero. I mean, it shouldn't be that big of an insult because you're a good young player, like duh. But it's just like Bam's a good young player. I mean, young is relative, but I mean he's not as old as like Jimmy or some other vets. But like, I mean, Bam's never in the trade rumors though. Tyler's probably sitting there like, why is Bam, they think Bam is like this golden child, and here I am. Like, I think I'm a pretty good player. I averaged 20 a game last year. But
yeah. I mean, I understand why they're not.
I get it too.
But from his perspective, yeah. So, I mean, I guess that kind of goes into the fact that Miami is his preferred destination. It's where he wants to end up. There was a report today from Woj, who went on ESPN and talked about this. Apparently, the Blazers are not going to send Dame there just because that's where he wants to be. They're going to look for the best package available, which I think makes sense. Like, if you're starting this rebuild, you should send Dame somewhere that I think you should find a combination of somewhere where he wants to be. Like, don't ship him off to Utah if he doesn't want to be in Utah. Like, ship him to a team that can give you the best assets that or some good assets, but also is a destination that he wants to go. I think there's a way to both do right by Dame, but also get the best package available. There's the rumors out there that the Blazers aren't super interested in Hero and that he would be rerouted to a third team in any potential Dame deal. Brooklyn was mentioned as a team that could potentially be involved with a Hero contract. I know Brooklyn's also involved in or interested in trying to get Damian Lillard as well. Philly's been brought up, so you can talk about that for a little bit if you want. The Clippers have been brought up as other suitors. But like you said, it's kind of a weird market at the moment for superstars. Also, apparently, I think it was Mark Stein said that teams are a bit worried about trading for Dame when Miami is the spot that he wants to be. But at the same time, like I think even if you're not his number one destination, like Dame's under contract for a few years. Like it's not risk of him leaving after one season or anything like that. So I don't think that'll be too much of a hurdle, but it's weird because like the Heat don't have the best superstar package unless they throw like Bam Adebayo, then the package is phenomenal. But like the Blazers don't want Hero. There would have to be a third team involved. Brooklyn has some draft capital like here and there from the Suns, which is particularly interesting down the line. But they're not going to want to give up Mikal Bridges because they want to compete with Mikal Bridges and Dame. They probably also don't want to give up like Claxton. They just signed Cam Johnson to a deal, so he can't really be traded unless the ink isn't dry on that yet and they do like a sign and trade. The Clippers have no package whatsoever unless they include Paul George. But even then, like PG or Kawhi in some wild scenario, those aren't players that move the Blazers who are heading towards a rebuild. So I do think it's the best decision by far to trade Dame and for Dame to go somewhere else. It is kind of a weird market.
And I think that kind of bleeds into what I wanted to mention with Harden is that I just feel like for both Dame and Harden, it's just a very weird standoffish type of market right now because, I mean, we talked at length about the Harden trade request in a video we did a couple days ago. So if you want to hear our full thoughts on that and a bunch of trade packages, then definitely check that video out. That was posted 2 or 3 days ago on this channel. But it's just kind of weird because just like Dame, I feel like there's not a clear package for either one of these guys. And I just think it's making it really tough for a bunch of teams to kind of go on with their offseason, other than the Suns, who apparently like, I don't think they're trading for Harden after, especially with all these moves. Me neither. But just like the Knicks, Clippers, Sixers, the Miami Heat, like all of these teams that are like kind of linked to these two guys, none of them have really done anything outside of like 1 or 2 minor free agent signings. I mean, like, you could argue, I guess, Dante DiVincenzo isn't a minor side, but you know what I mean? Like none of them have made flashes. And I just feel like it's kind of hard because all these free agents are going away and all these teams are trying to figure out what to do with their players. And I just think the Dame trade is going to happen before Harden trade. I would be stunned if a Harden trade happened before a Dame trade. I feel like, at least in my opinion, why would you trade for Harden when you could get Dame? I feel like at this point, Dame's probably the better player. Would you agree?
Yeah. Oh, Dame's easily the better player for sure.
So I mean, unless you really just didn't want to meet the Blazers package and you still wanted a borderline superstar player for like a lesser package, and then I could see Harden going first. But I just feel like Dame's going to go first, and then teams that didn't get Dame are going to be like, okay, we can get Harden for probably a little bit cheaper. He's still a really good player. What can we do to get him? But in the end, man, kind of like similar to like the Woj report that came out today, I think Harden's going to be a Sixer to start the season. I don't think he gets.
I agree. I think so too. I mean, again, like we mentioned this in our video talking about the trade, this is Daryl Morey who kept Ben Simmons on the roster for like 6 months, not playing. I don't think he's going to be any rush. I do think the Dame trade is going to hold things up as well because teams are going to prioritize going after Damian Lillard. And, you know, teams that don't get Dame might pivot to try and get Harden. But I think that's the domino that has to fall first. And I do think Dame will probably get traded soonish. Like, I think that's a deal that the Blazers probably want to get done sooner than later so they can head into this new era and not have like the cloud of, you know, him trying to request a trade hanging over the franchise. So I think that one gets done sooner than later. But even then, like when that finishes, I don't think Harden is guaranteed to be traded before the season. I think there's a real chance that he's still on the roster by the time the season rolls around for the Sixers, which makes sense because, again, something that I mentioned in the other video, this is a big trade for Philly. You have to get this one right. Like, if you get this wrong, you're in big trouble for Joel Embiid. Like, you know, could a potential trade request come from him at some point? And I think that's something else that we might see with some other teams. And it's kind of similar to what we saw with Kyrie and Kevin Durant, where some teams at the deadline this past year weren't interested in Kyrie Irving because they're like, oh, if you're going to trade Kyrie, is Kevin Durant going to be on the market? Like, you know, if you're looking for the bigger fish, why would you go ahead and trade for like Kyrie if Kevin Durant could be available? You know, would you trade for James Harden if maybe Embiid could become available? Not that I'm saying I think he will, because I don't think he will. But, you know, some teams might be looking at that as like, I think a team like the Knicks, for example, where Embiid fits that team a lot better if you make like a superstar trade. Why would you go after James Harden in this moment if Embiid could become available at some point soon when you're already a pretty good team? So I think there's a lot of forces at play. Like, people are going to be like, why isn't this trade happening? And I think a lot of people, again, are going to be, you know, mad at Daryl Morey saying like, make the trade already and this and that. But he showed with the Ben Simmons trade that he's able to hold out and still get a really good package that makes sense. I think he's going to do something similar. And it's also why it probably feels like the Sixers offseason is going kind of slow because Morey's probably trying to figure out, you know, what are we going to get from Harden? What could the packages potentially be? So like they're making some moves on the perimeters. And I know you're going to talk about the Sixers a little bit later when we get to our winners and losers of free agency. But yeah, I think there's a lot more at play than people are realizing with these two guys, the trade requests going on. And, you know, you also talk about a lot of other players being out there in the market too, like Pascal Siakam is apparently a bit more involved in trade rumors now. We'll talk about the Raptors as well later on in the video. You know, Paul George is someone that the Clippers were gauging interest on. I don't know if he's actually anywhere close to being on the move. We could see Levine get moved. Jared Allen might be available. So there's some other players out there in the market who might fit some of these teams better than a James Harden or Damian Lillard and cost them significantly less. So it's just a weird market at the moment. I think this big time CBA change is kind of screwing everything up too financially.
Final prediction: where do Dame and Harden suit up at the beginning of the season?
I think Dame's just going to end up in Miami. I mean, I think they figure out a way to get the package done. It's where he wants to go. I think ultimately they do right by Damian Lillard, and he goes to Miami. He's there at the beginning of the season alongside Jimmy and Bam. I think Harden's going to be a Sixer to start the season.
I hate to be extremely boring, but I agree with both of those. And I think it's going to end up being a Miami, Brooklyn, Portland 3-team trade for that.
Yeah. I mean, I think it makes the most sense. Like, one team I do want to throw out there as a dark horse that I think makes a lot of sense for Dame are the Pelicans. I think that's a trade they should really consider.
CJ back would be crazy.
It would be crazy. But I mean, you trade Ingram, you get now, imagine Damian Lillard next to Zion. Like, that's an incredible fit there. If you are able to give up Ingram, you have $1 billion first-round picks in the future. From the Bucks picks, in my opinion, are super valuable potentially because
you don't think they try to keep Ingram?
I mean, I'm sure they'll try to, but I think if you're getting Damian Lillard, you'll probably have to give up BI. I think you have to.
I personally think they'd be better off doing a package of like Trey Murphy, salary filler, and like 4 or 5 first.
I think you could try that, but I think the Blazers are going to try and force your hand with Ingram, in my opinion. Like, I don't take that package over. I mean, I guess they don't want Tyler Hero, so that's kind of a moot point. But I mean, I like the idea of getting like Maxey back from the Sixers a bit better. Although the Pelicans do have some of those, you know, valuable picks again from the Lakers who are getting older, the Bucks who are getting a lot older as well. So I guess maybe those picks are more valuable. I mean, and I do think Trey Murphy is an incredibly interesting piece who I guess does also, you know, fit that wing spot that they really don't have. Like they've got Shaedon Sharpe, who's a wing, but Trey Murphy plays a different role on the wing. So.
And the thing with the Pelicans too is they have a couple, picks down there that didn't really play. They have Dyson Daniels, who was a top 10 pick and didn't really play much. That could be an intriguing young player. Like that. And Kier Lewis is finally healthy this year. Him in an expanded role could be interesting. I feel like they have some like young dude. I mean, I doubt they want to deal Herb Jones because they just extended him, but
Yeah.
They do have a lot of interesting young players and lots of picks. I think that's what makes the Pelicans interesting is because all these other teams I feel like either have cool young players but no picks, or like some picks but no one they'd want to take in. I feel like the Pelicans are one of those few teams that have both.
Yeah, I've seen a lot. There are a lot of Thunder fans. Like there's actually, I don't know if I would say a lot, but there's like a small legion of Thunder fans that want us to trade for Dame, and I don't really get it. Like it doesn't make sense to me.
Real quick, I was going to mention this, but I'll mention it now. I do think the Thunder should kind of keep their squad this year and then kind of gauge where they're at. Like, let's say y'all win, I don't know, 50 games this year somehow, right? And you're just like, okay, we're really close, but we need a superstar wing to pair with Shea, Chet, J-Dub, and Giddey. We need a superstar wing.
Yeah.
I think next offseason, if you guys notice progress and think you're getting close, you make a splash for a superstar.
I think that's if I had to make a prediction, like coming from a diehard Thunder fan, I think that's exactly what happens. I think this season we stay put. There are a lot of people who are saying, oh, we're gearing up for a star trade because, and I'll talk about the Thunder a lot because we've been making a few moves that feel more like kind of win now type of moves. And a lot of people are thinking like, oh, we're gearing up. Like Siakam's now in rumors and people are like, maybe we could trade for Siakam. But I really think Sam Presti is going to go into the year and you should see how the young team looks before you break it up. Like you've got Shea, Giddey, J-Dub, Chet coming into the season healthy at this point, who he plays in the summer league tomorrow as we're recording this, which I'm super excited about in the Utah summer league. So you've got those young guys, like, some of the other young guys that showed promise this year. And I'll get into some of the additions that the Thunder made, but I think we're going to be really good. I'm biased, but I also think like we won 40 games this past year and are going to get significantly better going to next season. You've got to see how the young core works before you make a star trade. So, and I think that's also partially why maybe the Pelicans don't make that type of deal, because they showed they were incredible at the beginning of last season when they were fully healthy, or at least when Zion was playing. Like Ingram wasn't even really playing at the beginning of the year because he was hurt. When they were fully healthy, they were phenomenal. So maybe you don't try and break that up and see how the team looks and then maybe explore star trade later on. So I think that's another reason too why.
I think the only hard thing with the Pelicans is that Zion's health is such a question mark,
Yeah,
it's such a what if. Like in the Thunder's case, or some other teams' cases, it's just like, oh, we know we got this good group, but for the Pelicans, literally, will Zion be on the court? Like that's it's just the big question. But yeah, man, I agree. I think there's going to be some fun offseason potential next year with some of these young teams that are finally like we could talk about the Pistons and the Magic too in the same kind of boat. It's like at some point you got to make a splash and level yourself up. And I feel like the Rockets. Why don't we talk about you can go ahead and talk about the Rockets first because I know you feel pretty strongly about this, but it almost feels like the Rockets kind of jumped the gun and they're not really doing what like the Pistons, Magic, Spurs, Thunder, like all these teams are in the same kind of boat as we've been kind of booty for the last 3 or 4 years at least. So I feel like the Rockets kind of jumped the gun, I feel like a bit, and aren't really going the same route. So if you want to talk about that as your first loser, because I know how you feel about that, go for it, man.
Yeah, so I guess, we're going to go ahead now and get to our winners and losers of free agency. And this is just so far, like this is 3 days in. We could see some massive moves come over the next week or so, and our opinions could completely change. But yeah, I think one of my early losers are the Rockets. I feel a bit better about what they actually. I don't know if I do feel a bit better. Well, one thing that did make me feel better is if you watch my video on the YouTube channel, I hated the Fred VanVleet signing. I thought it was terrible. They gave him $43 million. And I still don't like the idea of him being your lead guard for this upcoming season. Well, you have Amen Thompson there on the roster, who I think is going to be really good and should get starting reps from day one to work through that. I like the idea of bringing in vets, but for me, and also I know the Rockets had to spend money to reach the salary floor or it was going to cost them a lot of money. I know they had to, but I just think there's better ways to go about it. Like Dillon Brooks, I don't think is that bad of a signing. Now, $20 million is a bit rich, in my opinion.
A bit rich is an understatement, I think, with that.
But I do think like the defense makes sense, like bringing that defensive identity to the team. He's not super old or anything, and he doesn't take away a bunch of minutes from like one of your top guys, like Jabari Smith, Jalen Green, like Amen Thompson. Like all those guys can still play if you bring in Dillon Brooks. They brought in Jacques Landale for $8 million a year, which
4 for 32
is fine, I guess. I mean, that feels like a lot for Jacques Landale. Like, he's a solid backup big, and they did need kind of a backup big. They brought in Jeff Green, who I don't even know how much he's going to play. I guess he's probably just going to be more of like a veteran presence there. The Fred VanVleet thing is really the thing that bothers me. And the third year being a team option does, again, help me feel a little bit better about this. But they've also made some really confusing moves. Like, they dumped Ty Washington, Usman Garuba to the Hawks for literally nothing to create cap space when they already had cap space. And
yeah, for Jeff Green, bro.
Those were young guys who, now I don't think either of them are going to become like star players. But for example, Ty Washington, you just drafted him in the first round this past year.
Never even really didn't. Really.
Yeah, you really never gave him that much of an opportunity. So like, what was the point of that pick? Usman Garuba he got some opportunities and he wasn't great. I believe he dealt with injuries as well. I might be misremembering, but
he had like a really legit summer league one year. I swear he was like really good.
Maybe. I don't know.
Some summer league.
That kind of sounds familiar, but like, I don't know. And then you gave up on Josh Christopher, who didn't seem like he didn't play much this past season anyways. And the 3-point shot was rough. So I understand you had to like move off of some players, but at the same time, I feel like you talk about a team like the Thunder, who I'm again going to talk about. Like, I feel like every move we make capitalizes on value. Like, we took Victor Oladipo in, getting a salary down, but even if we cut him, like we got, I think it was like a 2nd round pick. Like, at least we got something for bringing in a contract. Like, I think as a rebuilding team, that's something you should do. You take on like big contracts, get draft capital alongside that, let your young guys grow and develop. And sure, you can bring veterans in. And again, I know they had to spend money. I just don't love the way they went about it. I really don't like the Fred VanVleet signing. And overall, to me, it feels like they're chasing a result rather than going for a process, which is kind of what you mentioned a little bit with like what we're doing, in OKC. I think the Rockets are definitely going to be better. Like, I think they win probably like 37 games, maybe a little bit less, but they're not going to be a playoff team. And I don't think they're a play-in team either. I think the only teams that I would say they're comfortably better than in the West are
Spurs and Utah.
I mean, Utah, I think, is even questionable. Like, they've got Lowry, like they've got an established all-star over there who, Fred VanVleet was an all-star, but he had a down season this past year. Like, Utah's got an established all-star. The Spurs, they'll be better than, but Vic is really good. He could elevate them and at least will make them competitive. They'll be better than the Blazers after they trade Dame. I feel pretty comfortable in saying that. Like, I think the Blazers will probably be bottom of the West, then probably the Spurs, but then I think I would go with the Rockets, like as like the 13th or 12th best team in the Western Conference. And maybe some teams deal with injury and they jump, or like Jalen Green takes a leap and they're better. But I don't know. I don't understand signing these guys to all of this money to like seemingly try to commit to being competitive now when it feels like they're nowhere close. I think there's a better way to sign veterans that made you a better team and brought some veteran presence into the locker room. But at the same time, you didn't have to throw them a ton of money, and you now jeopardize, in my opinion, some of the developmental time for some of your players.
So I feel like I was talking about this with a buddy earlier today. I feel like Dylan Brooks is going to start. Fred's going to start.
It's going to be Fred, Jalen Green, Dylan Brooks, Jabari Smith, Şengün. And
then your bench rotation then rounds out to Jeff. You just brought in Jeff Green. You just brought in Jock Landale. So this two, Amin, Tari Eason,
Kevin Porter Jr.
I
think that's probably kind of your general rotation. You probably got.
Who did they draft with like 19? Didn't they have an?
Oh, they got Cam Whitmore.
But I mean,
will probably play a little bit, but actually, I don't even know how much Whitmore's going to play because now you have these veterans and your star young guys that you have to give minutes.
It just almost feels like they should have kind of went for like, we'll take some bad contracts and in a trade versus like free agency. And I think the thing that makes me kind of wonder if Fred VanVleet is, sure he got overpaid, but like, were they competing against anybody? Like, was there anyone that offered
That's
him?
Also my thing. Like, were the Raptors really offering him $43 million? There's no way.
There's no way.
If they were, let him go back. Let him go back to Toronto if they're offering him $43 million. I don't think they were in competition with anybody. I think it's partially just because like Fred would probably rather stay in Toronto and make like 35-ish million than go to Houston where it's not a great situation at the moment and make 43. They had to overpay because they're not in a good situation right now. So that's also kind of a hindrance to them. But I don't know. I feel like they're just like throwing a life raft out to like the rebuild and not like dragging it to shore. It feels like they're just throwing the life raft out there.
One thing I do want to say before I'll talk about a winner is I do think the situation is a little bit because a lot of people kind of crapped on the Knicks for giving. I know it's not nearly as much money, but a lot of teams kind of came at the Knicks for giving Jalen Brunson $25 million a year, like back in the day. And obviously, like I said, 25 is a lot less than 40. But they're just like, Jalen Brunson giving you 25, like that's not going to really elevate your team. And he just kind of took that leap and became such a good player. Obviously, he's younger than Fred VanVleet, and he's a little bit different of a player, but it'll be interesting. I will be very interested to see if like he's able to elevate the people around him as like a veteran guard, because, you know, having Kevin Porter Jr. as your lead guard is not going to make anybody better.
Yeah, I do think Fred VanVleet helps with like Jabari Smith. I think he's one player that's really going to benefit from the playmaking of a guy like Fred VanVleet. But yeah, I don't know. I do think Fred VanVleet might help with the development of like a Jabari Smith Jr., but I worry about it hurting Amin Thompson, who I really think should be starting at the 1 this season and will probably at least be a bench guard for the next year or two because of Fred VanVleet's contract. So I don't know. It's a weird situation. I don't hate the free agency as much as I once did, but that in combination with some of the trades that they made that were just a bit confusing, I think they're one of my losers of free agency.
So I'm going to talk about a quick winner, and there's not really a lot to say about it. It's just like they brought in a lot of really good players, and that's just the Los Angeles Lakers. I think before the trade deadline last season, their biggest issue was depth. They had Russ, AD, LeBron, and just like everybody else. You know what I mean? It just kind of seemed like that was really it. And then now they're like, I'd argue they're like 10 or 11 deep, man. Like all guys.
They're a deep team. Like they've got a lot of good players on this roster.
Team. Like starting lineup for next season, I'm thinking it's going to be what, like D'Lo, Reeves, Braun, AD, and maybe like Rui.
Yeah, maybe, yeah. I would say probably Rui starts.
And then you have Gabe Vincent, who is a very good shooting point guard off the bench.
I think he could even take the starting job at some point if he outperforms D'Lo. But yeah,
but even if D'Lo comes off the bench, D'Lo's a great 6-man to have. And I think
exactly.
Might even serve him better, honestly, as a 6-man. Come off and get, because instead of having him be a playmaker, you could have him come off the bench and just be a bucket getter.
Yeah,
it might suit him better.
Because you can have Braun and Reeves both playmake. Like I did see one report that also Austin Reeves is going to do a lot more. Like they're going to run a lot more offense through him, which I think is a great idea. Like he was really good in that connecting role this past year. And I think also the fact that they got Austin Reeves for, it was what, 4 years, $54 million, when a lot of people thought they might have to pay him $100 million, it's incredible. Like that's such a good deal for Austin Reeves, who is really good. Like it's not the Lakers hype machine with Austin Reeves. He's legitimately
when this man's getting 20 free throws a game sometimes, like it's not.
Yeah, he gets superstar calls as an undrafted guy in his second year. Like that's generational foul baiting. That's, you pay money for that.
Yeah. And I just think, and even some of like the other guys they got, like Cam Reddish and Jackson Hayes, Taurean Prince, like these are guys that are going to be the end of your bench, but like those are guys that would be either like fringe starters or like 6-7 man in a lot of teams' lineups. And you have them as like your 9 or 10 guy off the bench. Like that's freaking sweet, man. And there's a lot of versatility there too. You know what I mean? Like Cam Reddish, I know he hasn't been great, but even as he's still 23 years old and he can shoot,
you might as well take a shot in the potential.
Defense, maybe. Like he at least is versatile, and same with Taurean Prince. I feel like he's kind of like you have guys that you can kind of plug and play. So, and Jackson Hayes gives you some hype off the bench. I mean, he can dunk the ball a couple times. So I mean, I just really like what they did. I think I do think losing Schroeder is going to kind of hurt, but I do feel like bringing in Gabe Vincent makes it kind of a moot point. Like I feel like they kind of. If anything, I think Gabe might be a little bit better offensively. Maybe not like bringing the ball to the rim. Like Schroeder's pretty good at,
yeah, I know. But I think Gabe wasn't great shooting in the regular season, but
if his three-point
shooting looks, if it looks anything like it did in the playoffs, which I think it could look more like that with LeBron, AD, guys like him kind of setting him up, I think Gabe's going to be really good. I agree completely. I love what the Lakers did in free agency. Cam Reddish hasn't been great so far, but why not take a shot in the potential?
I mean, a minimum contract and have him being like your 10th man, like there's
and
no
if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Like you're not relying on him to be like the Hawks, the Knicks, like the Blazers. These were all teams that were somewhat relying on Cam Reddish a little bit. I think it might honestly serve him a bit better to be one of the last guys in the rotation. Just let him work, develop, get spot minutes here and there. And, if he turns into a player, he turns into a player. If not, then whatever. Jackson Hayes is at least like an energetic, like legit 7-foot type
They've
of
never
guy.
really had that energetic center off the bench that I can remember.
No.
Maybe
they tried to bring in Montrezl Harrell all those years ago, but he was bad at that point. So, but he's also young and you can develop him. Like I agree completely. I think the Lakers are one of my biggest winners as well. Maybe even the biggest winner so far. They took a team that went to the Western Conference Finals, stayed with the continuity, which I really like, rather than going after the star. You brought back Austin Reeves, you brought back Rui Hachimura, you added some solid pieces around LeBron, Anthony Davis. I think they did a really good job. And again, they feel like one of the best teams in the Western Conference. So I completely agree.
All right, hit me with another winner or loser, whatever you want.
I guess I can go with a winner now because I kind of talked about a loser already. For a winner, I'm going to go with the Phoenix Suns. Let's talk about them. Now, of course, they brought in Bradley Beal. That was like kind of their big first move of the offseason. They gave up Chris Paul in the process. There's rumors about DeAndre Ayton. Like, I don't know if the Suns are done yet, but I think they've done a lot to fill out this roster. Like, they've made a ton of moves to add a bunch of guys to this team, and they were severely limited financially. Like, it was really hard to envision them bringing in real impactful players. But I thought they did a good job. Yuta Watanabe was a lights-out shooter this past season. He adds some more offensive punch to that team, which really might not have even needed it, but he does bring that punch. Like, I think he shot like 50% from the corner this past season. And him and Kevin Durant played in Brooklyn. Katie spoke really highly of him, so they bring him in.
I didn't even think about that. They were teammates. That's a good point.
Yeah, I think Katie talked in his podcast about how much he liked playing with Yuta and how big of a fan he was of him. So you bring him in. He's also a bigger wing type of player, which I think is a valuable archetype to have on your roster. Keita Bates-Diop's really underrated. He shot well from three this past season for the Spurs. He also defends pretty well. He's a bigger guy as well. I think he could end up being their starting three at some point during the season. I think there's a legit world where he is the fifth starter alongside Ayton, Beal, Booker, Kevin Durant.
I think it's still going to be Okogie for a bit.
Yeah, Okogie probably makes more sense as and also, they brought him back as the continuity type of piece. But I think Keita Bates-Diop could end up fitting better. I think the 3-point shooting is more sustainable with him, I think, than Okogie. But yeah, like you said, they brought back Okogie. I'm now trying to remember the rest of the guys they brought in. They brought in Eric Gordon today, which gives them more of an offensive punch. The defense is rough and he is getting older, but at the same time, I think just having a guy like that has kind of that veteran experience and can give you some buckets is perfectly fine to add to the roster. Who else did they bring in?
They brought, I have it pulled up. They brought Damian Lee back, which I think he was really solid for them in minutes, I think.
Yeah.
And then one guy I really want to highlight, which I think is at least this is, I know we're going to talk about underrated signings later, but I'll bring up one now since we're talking about it. Metu. I really, really like that signing.
I also really like the Chimezie Metu signing.
I like that a lot.
Yeah, I don't know, he gives you a nice front court piece that can do a little bit of everything.
He's a different backup center than Eubanks. You have Eubanks. I kind of compare Eubanks' game to kind of like Drummond. He's going to get you a ton of rebounds and then he can play good around the rim. Metu is just a high flying energy dude, man. He's just exciting. He can shoot a little bit too. So I think I like what they did with the backup big situation.
Yeah, and So they signed Damian. I'm trying to remember all the players that they brought in. They brought in someone else.
So you've named everybody. It's Gordon, Lee, Eubanks.
Really, everyone? For some reason, it feels like there should be 10
Okogie
people.
And Watanabe, and then the only player they lost was Landale.
They lost Torrey Craig too, or he hasn't signed yet.
He hasn't signed yet, but yeah.
Yeah, they could potentially bring him back. I would still like for them to try and bring him back. I don't know if they're actually going to, but
I think he's going to get more than they've been giving all these guys the vet min. I think he's going to get a little bit more.
Yeah. So. I mean, I think they did a great job. I don't think it's a perfect bench. I think there's still a decent number of holes, and I do worry a little bit about the defense as well. But in terms of what money they had, I think they did a good job bringing in players. They didn't really name chase. They brought in players that I think fit what they needed for the most part.
They got a lot of guys that could fit a role. They're all right, who's a guy that could get us some buckets off the bench? Who's a guy that could rim run? Who's a guy that could play a little bit defense? Who's a lockdown shooter? They kind of just went for the best available on a minimum for every single archetype I feel like you come up with, which you were saying, it's just we have all these different guys. Okay, do we have someone that can get us some buckets here? Do we have someone that can spot up for a three? Do we have someone that can dunk the ball? I feel like you kind of got a lot of looks, kind of like what we were talking about the Lakers. So they got a lot of versatile pieces and a lot of guys that could fit different roles. I think the Suns kind of went for a very similar approach. It's not like they signed a bunch of redundant guys. It's why did they sign? Kind of like when the Knicks signed 4 power forwards that one year. It's just okay, we get it. You want to get a lot of power forwards. But I agree with you. I think they did a great job.
Yeah. I mean, all around, they still have Cameron Payne there as a backup guard as well on that team. They brought back Ish Wainwright on a small contract. I thought the Suns had a good free agency. And, it might not be over. Maybe we see DeAndre Ayton get moved at some point. But overall, really like what the Suns have done so far.
I'm going to combine 2 losers into one with this one because I think they're in very similar situations. I'm going to combine Portland and the Sixers just because they both are currently sitting on a superstar's potential trade request. And I don't think it's fair to call them loser or definite losers, because if Portland gets a haul for Dame, it's really unfair to call them losers when we've been begging them to blow it up this entire time. So if they get a haul for Dame, they're winners in my opinion.
I agree.
Same with the Sixers. The Sixers are able to trade Harden and still be really good. I would call them winners too for, dealing with that situation. But at the recording of this video, you're sitting on a near $200 million contract for Jeremy freaking Grant, and your best player wants out. Like, it doesn't get.
It's not a great situation for
more of a
the
loser
Blazers.
than that.
But at the same time, like you said, I mean, I think the best move, like when they trade Dame, I think they're winners. Obviously, depending on the package, we'll see what they get. But I think moving on from Damian Lillard that's a win for the Blazers in the long run. Really, the Jeremy Grant contract is just the part that makes them automatically win or losers.
They're losers until we see what happens with Dame.
Yeah, until we see what happens with Dame. Like 160 mil is just so much for Jeremy Grant, and the fact that you signed him to that. Yeah, and for a team that's heading to a rebuild, like you signed him to that, and they were saying that he could already be on the trade block, but like that contract, I think nobody really likes that contract. I haven't seen anybody that loved that contract yet. And Jeremy Grant is good; he's really valuable. But do you want to be paying Jeremy Grant $30 million? Like, who's he going to be traded to? So I don't know if you can move off of that contract right now, and you're kind of stuck with it at the moment. So to me, that's kind of a loss. Again, when they trade Dame, if they get a good haul, I think they'll be winners in the long run because the rebuild is really what they should be going for. And if we're talking full offseason, getting Scoot, trading Dame probably for a haul, like they're winners of the offseason. Mm-hmm. But the Jeremy Grant contract stings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then kind of bouncing off that, the Jeremy Grant contract just kind of reminds me of the Tobias Harris contract in a way. It's like a really good player that's just going to have that he's just going to get scrutinized for his deal. You know what I mean? Like if Jeremy Grant's having a bad stretch, people are going to be like, oh, we paid him $40 million a year to, and Dame's still left. It's going to be, and then with Tobias Harris, it's just like if he has a bad game, everyone's like, oh, there's our max contract player, doing that. It's just kind of unfortunate because I think Jeremy Grant's going to get a lot of hate for how much money he's getting paid when he's still like a borderline all-star player when he's at his best. And it's kind of like the same with Tobias Harris. So I think they're going to be very lumped together with in that case. And then
yeah, I see that. I definitely see that connection. We're going to get a lot of takes that Jeremy Grant's bad when he's not. He's just getting overpaid, and people like to put those two things together. Yeah,
and then kind of finishing what I was saying about Philly. It's just like we have to kind of wait and see with Harden. I mean, you lost 3 rotational players from the playoffs. Like, I know Shake kind of didn't really play a ton in the playoffs, but he had his moments. And then you ran like 7 and 8 man rotations in the playoffs, and Jalen McDaniels and Niang were 2 of those guys. And you don't really have anyone internally that can really play that role as a wing. Like Jaden Springer kind of works in a way for losing Shake Milton because, it's a guard that's been getting crazy good reps in the G League, and he's looked really good. I think he won G League MVP, right?
He was at least in that conversation. I think
he might have been the G League Finals MVP. It was something like that. He got some kind of reward or something or award, but
yeah, he won G League Finals MVP.
Okay, but the Sixers don't have an internal wing. There's no one we don't have this guy. It's like, oh, this guy hasn't been getting any reps. Like, we'll get to plug him in and see what he's got. I mean, unless you consider Korkmaz of that.
And he wants out. Korkmaz requested trade the deadline, and they did nothing. They said, nah, you're just going to keep not playing.
Yeah. And the thing that irks me about, and I tweeted about this too, about Jalen McDaniels, is you traded away Matisse, who was a former first-round pick, who at least had a really good role in the team, even though he made us so mad as Sixers fans, man. I mean, his defense was good, but his offense was such a black hole. But at least, I don't know, he still provided some value. And you traded 34th overall pick in the draft, which is like almost just a late first, for half a season of a guy who was okay in the regular season and then was basically like he played in the playoffs, but it's not like there wasn't like the Jalen McDaniels game or he never had like a stop that kind of like defined his playoffs. It was just kind of like he was there. He took up 10 minutes a game and he got a couple boards, maybe made up 2 every once in a while, got a couple fouls. But I think in retrospect, that trade is a huge L for the Sixers after, what's going to happen here. And it's just like, I don't know, man. It's just like Niang and McDaniels, they got bags, but when you have their bird rights, the Sixers could have matched it. I mean, I don't know, man. It's almost making me think more and more that like if Harden is dealt, it is going to be for like a volume of role players. So it's like, because if you trade Harden for a package of Powell, Morris, Batum, and Covington, then all those guys I just named have gotten essentially replaced. You know what I mean? Like we got the wings that we lost back. That, and arguably they're just as good, if not better. But unfortunately, you now have Marcus Morris, who is making a lot of money. No James Harden.
Yeah.
You got your wings back, but you lost the top 20 player in the process. So it's just like, but that was like my thought is just like, dang, are we letting all these people go because we know this is what we're going to end up doing? I hope not. But the Sixers really have to do something, man, because we just don't have any wing depth right now. It's like really, really bad. It's Tobias and PJ, and then I would say Korkmaz. I mean, Paul Reed's still a free agent. We did get Pat Bev, which is nice because I think him and Melton is going to be fun on defense as backups. I think that could be fun.
Pat Bev feels like a player that should have been in Philly at some point already. I'm surprised this is his first stop in Philly.
And I think people are going to hate Pat Bev, I think, more than they've ever hated him. I think a lot of people hated him on the Lakers, but I think in Philly, I think it's going to be even more.
The one thing that goes to Pat Bev's side is that he's really funny. Like him showing the ref the camera in that Lakers game was hilarious. So I do like the Pat Bev signing, but yeah, I agree. The Sixers are losers so far. They're sitting on James Harden. Again, if they get a great return, it could end up being not that bad of an offseason. But for right now, they've gotten Pat Bev and haven't really done much otherwise, which, it's hard to with the Harden trade request looming. So I guess we'll see. And I guess with you talking about the Sixers, your favorite team, I'll talk about the Thunder, my favorite team. Winners of free agency so far, in my opinion.
The winners or a winner?
A winner.
I thought you said the winners of free agency. So I was like, all right, man. The Lakers and the Suns might have been a little bit better, but I do agree the Thunder are winners. So keep going.
We've done exactly what I wanted to see in this offseason. We're not making any bold trades like we talked about earlier. We just kind of have used our cap space. Like we brought in Victor Oladipo, return of a Thunder legend, which is awesome, from Miami to help them clear up some cap space. We got some draft compensation back, which is cool. We also took on Patty Mills' contract. That was part of like this whole Houston, Dylan Brooks type situation that also involved like the Nets.
I can't wait to see the full trade of that. Like when they,
it's like a weird web of stuff. We still don't know exactly what that full thing looks
it's going to end up at this rate. We'll see. You have Nets, Grizzlies, Rockets, Thunder. It's a 4-team trade as of now, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Maybe Atlanta's looped into it with the other deal that they made. Like, is that a separate trade or is that like kind of part of this?
They
dumped Ty Washington. Yeah,
it might be.
Like it's gonna be one of those really weird deals where there's all these moving parts involved with it. So we'll see what ends up happening there. But I think that's exactly what you should do as a rebuilding team. You should bring in, and I think the Thunder are close to the end of like this rebuilding era, but we're still kind of in that mode. We bring in bad contracts, get draft capital. Worst case, we cut them because we weren't going to use our 16 million cap space for anything else. Like we're not a free agency destination. So you take advantage of cap space in another way. And, maybe Oladipo or Patty Mills sticks around. Like we have a bunch of players on the roster. I don't know if either of them will make it to the season itself. But worst case, we've got a couple of veteran guys. Why not? Like I think that's a good way to pick up vets without paying Fred VanVleet $43 million. And we also brought in Micic. If you don't know who that is, I think it's Vasilije Micic. Probably butchered that, but he's a EuroLeague MVP. He's been rumored to come over to the NBA for quite a few years at this point. The Thunder got his draft rights from the Sixers in the Al Horford trade, actually, which appreciate that one. You gave us the Thunder legend Al Horford and Micic, but he's really good. Like he plays in the EuroLeague like a Luka light. I'm not saying he's going to be Luka or be anything close to him, but that kind of play style where he's a playmaking kind of combo, like forward guard type of guy who I think fits really well on this roster in terms of what OKC is trying to do with players that can handle the ball and make plays for themselves as well as others, like all across the roster. I think he adds that identity. I think he's going to be really solid this upcoming season, gives us a fun another piece on the bench at the forward spot. And I think we're really well set up. We've got Chet healthy. We brought in Micic. We also signed Jack White to a deal for the moment, which I think he'll probably just compete in training camp and probably get cut by the time the season rolls around. Just kind of like a prove it, see what you're capable of type deal. But I'm pretty sure I think it was like 2 years. And I'm guessing the second year is going to be unguaranteed. I'm guessing we probably were just like, hey, we'll give you some money, let you come and compete and work alongside these guys and see what happens. If you stick, you stick. Maybe we sign him to a two-way. Maybe we like cut him and then sign him to a two-way or something like that. But I love what we've done so far. It's not been anything drastic, but I don't think we needed to. Like we both talked about earlier, I think OKC needs to go into this year, see what the young core looks like, and maybe next offseason is when the star trade happens. You use the draft picks, probably Lou Dort's contract, which breaks my heart to say, but We'll see what happens, but for right now, I think the Thunder have done a great job of operating within themselves in this offseason, not trying to rush what's going on, because we could have, thrown all our chips in the middle. We won 40 games this past year. We're 1 game away from the playoffs. We could have thrown in all our chips and said, we're going to try and compete now, but we're taking it slow, which is exactly what you should do. And even though we're taking it slow, I think we could be pretty solid this season. I wouldn't be surprised if we were a top 6 seed in this upcoming year's Western Conference.
I mean, I don't really have anything else to add to that. I know I talked about the Thunder at length.
I did my big spiel, yeah.
And then I mentioned why I thought I was in agreement with you on that one. So we'll leave that at that. I do agree the Thunder are big winners. And I think, the Rockets, like Connor said, the Rockets are going to be better, man. But I think the Thunder approach would have been a little bit smarter. But who knows? We'll see. Maybe they really do value, because their development just hasn't been going as good as some of the other young teams. So maybe
maybe it is like value.
That's what they need. They feel like they want to kind of go a little bit of a weirder route. But we'll see. But another winner I'm going to talk about, because I know the next loser, Connor also feels very passionate about. We'll let him talk about them. But I'll talk about the Cleveland Cavaliers. Mm-hmm. I feel like they haven't done anything too crazy, but their biggest weakness last year was far and away their bench. Like, I think that was what lost them most of their games, and what kind of took them out of some games. Just was not really going too hot. And they brought back Karis LeVert, which, he's really, really, really inconsistent as a player, but he's still a great bench piece for any team. And you bring him back you
don't have a lot of depth. You got to bring back a player like that. The contract is a little rich, but I do think
he's making less than Dylan Brooks, and I argue he's better than Dylan Brooks. So.
He brings some value to the table. Brooks is an all-defensive guy. Karis LeVert, like every other night, Karis LeVert is incredible. The other night, Karis LeVert is really rough. So it's like, what version of Karis LeVert are you getting?
I do like George Niang for them, because they ran Okoro and some other guys like Dean Wade a lot at that 4 position, or like he could run a small ball 3, or like a big ball 3, I guess you could say. But they really lack shooting a lot of the time, especially off the bench, when you didn't have Mitchell shooting, and then you have Mobley and Allen, who I know Mobley has a little bit of touch, but he's not this like sharp shooter, and Allen is back to the basket type of player. And you just kind of try to putting Okoro over there a lot of the time, I feel like, and it just kind of left the dude open. Now, if Niang's your dude, you leave open, the other team can't necessarily live with it. He's going to hit some shots. And I also think that it can help with just making the team a little bit deeper and just giving you another look. Mm-hmm. And I like that too with Max Strus, kind of the same way. Like, I think Max Strus is going to slide into the 3 for the Cavs. I think, I know
the thing that helps with them is, they've got like Mobley and Allen down low. Like, the defense is going to be really solid regardless.
Exactly. So you can hide him on defense. Like, you can hide Niang, you can hide Strus on defense.
Exactly.
You have Mobley and Allen.
Yeah. So you can figure that out. I think just adding shooting and offensive production in general is huge, because last year's a lot of Garland make a play, Mitchell make a play, like someone do something.
Mobley get the rebound. Jared Allen get the rebound.
Yeah, like it was, and then those two defend. Like, they needed a bit more to this roster. That was the big reason why they lost the Knicks, because the Knicks had a bunch of depth. The Cavs had like a great starting 5 or starting 4, and they just didn't have a lot of guys outside of that. So, I agree. I think the Cavaliers are winners. The Strus and LeVert contracts are both kind of big, but I think they fit kind of a role that you need, with LeVert being kind of a guy who can create some buckets off the bench. Again, it depends if he's awful or fantastic every other night, but Strus adds a bit more of like a shooting presence to the team. I know the shot was up and down at some points, but I think if you can find some of that consistency, I like it a lot. Same with George Niang.
It's kind of like I was saying, though, even if he's not hitting his shots, you
have to respect him.
You can't leave him open. That's going to help everybody else out too. So I think
sag off.
Yeah. And shout out my boy and Connor's boy, Ty Jerome, UVA legend, also getting a contract from the Cavs.
Thunder legend as well.
I don't think it's negligible. I think he can play and actually play a role. So shout out Ty Jerome.
They had some problems with some backup guard minutes. Maybe he gets some time there. They signed him to like a full standard contract. So I thought he had some fine minutes on the Warriors this past season too. So shout out to the Cavs. So we've got like one loser left and one winner.
Yep. So if you want to hit the loser, I'll take the winner.
Okay. Yeah. These are kind of tied. We can kind of talk about these two teams together, I think.
Yeah. You can bleed into it. Go ahead. And then I'll just give you my points after you go ahead.
Okay. So the last winner and loser that we have, the winner are the Pacers and the losers are the Nuggets. Bruce Brown left the Nuggets to go to the Pacers. I felt like he was probably going to chase the money. We did see like Michael Malone say at the championship parade, like, we're running it back. And he was like, had his hand on Bruce Brown's shoulder. But when the Pacers offer you 20 $2 million a year, like you've got to take that back. I don't think Nuggets fans can be mad at all at Bruce Brown for taking that contract. And I really like it for the Pacers. It's a 2-year deal, like $22 million. Sure, it's probably a bit of an overpay for Bruce Brown, but it's a 2-year deal. You have a team option on the second year. So if it doesn't work out this season and he's just not playing up to that, you just decline the team option and let him go. Like, why not? So you take a chance on a player who is a huge part of a championship winning team over there in Denver. I think he slots in really nicely to your team. He adds some defense. He was playing a lot of backup one for the Nuggets this past season, so he can do a little bit of that as well. Just be another ball handler alongside like Tyrese and Andrew Nembhard. He can play that role. And, the defense was a concern because Halliburton's not a great defender, or I would even say not even close to a good defender. Benedict Mathurin's not really a good defender yet either. You've got Miles Turner. You added Jarris Walker as a defensive player too in the draft. I like his game a lot. Bruce Brown's going to give you some defense. They also run Obi Toppin for 2 second-round picks, which I love. Like, why not take a chance on a young player?
Underrated trade of the offseason, in my opinion.
That was fantastic. And it's so funny because I was doing a BR stream, Bleacher Report, and I was talking about the Knicks. And I was talking about some of the moves I thought the Knicks needed to make. And a lot of people in the chat were saying, trade Julius Randle, let Obi Toppin start, because Obi Toppin can do what Julius Randle can. And I don't think that's true at all. I think Obi Toppin's good. I don't think he's all NBA player Julius Randle level, although, Julius Randle does drop off in the playoffs. But like 15 to 20 minutes after that stream wrapped up, and I wish it happened during the stream because it would have been so funny. But 15 to 20 minutes after that, he gets traded to the Pacers for 2 second-round picks. I love that deal for the Pacers. They need more guys in that front court. Why not add Obi Toppin? So now you could run out a starting lineup of like Tyrese, Benedict Mathurin. They also traded Chris Duarte to get his money off the books. That was a bad draft pick. I don't know why they took a guy who was like 24 years old in the lottery.
When they were bad.
Yeah, when you were bad, like it didn't make any sense. But you have Tyrese, you have Benedict Mathurin. You could run Bruce Brown there at the starting 3 spot. You could put Hield in there if you want more shooting, but I think the defense of Bruce Brown might be a little more valuable. I would have Hield come off the bench probably. So you have Bruce Brown, who was knocking down threes as well this past season. So he keeps the spacing decent. Hield's a way better shooter, but the spacing still will be fine in my opinion. And that the 4, you either run Obi Toppin if you want to start him, or you could start Jarris Walker. If you want the defense, you go with Jarris. And you could probably do it like, if you want more of an offensive punch, you put Obi Toppin in there. You could do it like situationally. Miles Turner still there at the 4. They're going to be so much fun to watch. Like the lobs from Tyrese to Obi Toppin are going to be really fun. Tyrese even said himself he was going to do the whole thing like, the meme with quarterbacks when it's like, for example, with Kyler Murray with DeAndre Hopkins, it was like, F it, DeAndre Hopkins is down there somewhere. Yeah. Tyrese said he was going to do that with Obi Toppin, just like throw it towards the rim and be like, Obi will get that. And they're going to be one of the most fun league pass teams in the entire season, or the entire league this upcoming season. I can't wait to watch them. And Bruce Brown leaving the Nuggets, I think, makes them an automatic loser. He was really big for them this past season. They also bring back DeAndre Jordan, which I guess he's a locker room guy.
Winners, bro. I don't know what you mean. That's championship DNA.
But like they still don't have a backup big on that roster, which they didn't really need this past season. I mean, they won a title, but Jeff Green played that backup big position at times.
And they lost Thomas Bryant.
They lost him. Yeah, they lost Thomas Bryant, who never really played, but at least it was a big body if you needed one. They brought back Reggie Jackson on a $5 million a year deal, which I don't love because he didn't really play for you, and I wasn't impressed when he did. So I don't know. Like he gives you a backup 1 instead of Bruce Brown, who played that role. But at the same time, I don't think he provides nearly as much value as like a Bruce Brown. They did just get Justin Holiday like right before we started this, and I do like him as a wing there for you. But the Nuggets are still the best team in the West at this moment, but I think they've taken some significant hits, and they're going to have to find some way to shore those up, whether it's Christian Brown improves, whether they put, Zeke Naji in more roles as like that backup big potentially. We'll see what happens, but for right now, I think the Nuggets are one of the losers of free agency just because they lost some integral pieces, mainly Bruce Brown, and I don't think they've gotten better.
Their depth has taken a big hit. Like we talked about how the Lakers are so deep now. The Nuggets are like 6 deep right now, bro. If that, I feel like it's just.
I mean, they've got like their starting 5. Reggie's rough. Like I don't know.
It's their starting 5 in Christian Brown. Like that's kind of what we're working with right now, right?
Justin Holiday, I think, will be fine. But yeah, like I mean, he's
I don't know. Justin Holiday is overrated as heck.
He doesn't fit the same role that I don't know if anybody's rating Justin Holiday highly. I don't know if you could say he's overrated.
But I feel like so many teams acquired. Like think about the Hawks took him in as like the piece from the Kevin Huerter trade, and he didn't do anything there. I can't even remember a single play on him in Dallas. And like Dallas was in desperate need for defense, and Justin Holiday's whole thing is he can play some defense. So I don't know. I just feel like he's a guy that, like, in theory is a cool player, but all these teams get him, and he's just kind of like, he's there.
Yeah, I guess maybe putting him in Denver where you've got Jokic, like Jamal Murray and everyone, like maybe they can get the most out of him. But I don't know. I would say they're losers. I mean, I don't think it's a disaster. Like saying they're losers isn't saying that they're not going to repeat.
Yeah, it wasn't like they won the finals and they let Jamal walk, or they traded MPJ in case. You know what I mean? It's not like
I just think they've still got some work to do to kind of keep that pace that they were on. They're still my favorites in the West as of right now, but I do think some of those other teams have caught up to them a little bit, and they've got to try and figure out how to shore that thing up. So yeah, that's kind of our Pacers Nuggets talk, I guess, because those teams are bonded now by Bruce Brown. And I ran out of water, so that's unfortunate. But we've got a couple more segments.
I've been so thirsty this whole time, bro. I'm not gonna lie.
All right, well, we'll move on to the underrated signings.
Kind of parched here, but
you'll be fine. You'll be fine.
I know.
I guess we have also some interesting teams we thought we could talk about real quick.
Yeah. I'll mention one. I got Dallas on here just because, like, it's cool that they brought Kyrie back. I feel like if they lost Kyrie, they might have been the loser of the losers of the off. You know what I mean? I think their off season's in shambles because they just traded away a lot of their future for Kyrie, and then he just walked after half the season. They missed the playoffs. So I do think that I wouldn't call him quite a winner, but I do think that's really awesome that they got him back. I mean, they drafted a center. That's kind of cool, I guess. They got off Bertans' money. Rashawn Holmes kind of stinks, but who knows? He was good a couple of years ago.
So yeah, maybe he refined some value, but like he just did not play for the Kings this past season.
And then Steph Curry's a cool pickup. They definitely were lacking some shooting off the bench when they made some of their trades. So especially, Bertans was supposed to always be their shooter off the bench.
Yeah, he was supposed to be, and
we know how that went. So it's cool that they brought Seth back, and then all they really lost was Justin Holiday. So I mean, it is what it is. But I do think they're interesting. I'm curious to see what happens with Christian Wood. I know we're going to talk about him when we say our best free agents remaining, but I mean, even if they lose Christian Wood, I wouldn't even call the Mavericks a loser.
I don't think he's coming back.
I mean, considering how much Jason Kidd banished him to the Shadow Realm, like day one of the season.
Day one, like before the season even started, there was the report that he was going to come off the bench, or Jason Kidd said he was, and Christian Wood was like subtweeting him like before the season even began. So I don't see him coming back. My big thing for Dallas, I think they've set themselves up decently. They have to bring in some defense. Like Rashawn Holmes is not going to help. Is not going to save your defense. The report is that him and Dwight Powell are going to fight for the starting center job at this point. You need a better starting center than either of those guys, in my opinion, to be the rim protector and anchor of this defense. They don't really have like many wings either. It's like Tim Hardaway Jr., Reggie Bullock, but like Hardaway Jr. is kind of like a 2-3, and he's not a defender. I guess they do have Josh Green.
He needs to step up, man. I know we've been saying this for a while, but he needs to step up.
They need to just give Josh Green more minutes. Honestly, Josh Green should start for you this upcoming season. Give him the opportunity, let him go out there and run, see what he can do. I think Josh Green is a big swing factor for them, but I think you need more wings. You need to solidify the big spot.
Who's their starting four? They need a four.
Kleba, I guess. Kleba's their four. Like he's fine, but
it usually comes off the bench though. But I mean, I feel like if you had a starting lineup of Luka, Kyrie, Josh Green, and you got like a really good four, like a solid four.
You could be solid. I mean, they played Reggie Bullock as a small ball four, like a little bit over this past season.
Then that bleeds into their defense being bad.
Yeah, so I mean, if you play Bullock as a three, I like it a lot.
If you had a lockdown defensive center, then I think you could get away with Bullock as a four, or even Tim Hardaway in there for some minutes. But like, if you already have no rim protection at the five, and then you have a small ball four, it's just not you're gonna be eaten alive.
Yeah, I don't really know. So Dallas is interesting. Like they had to bring back Kyrie. There was no way you could let him walk and be cool with it. You were screwed if you let him walk.
Yeah, absolutely.
So they're in a decent spot, but they've got to make some more moves. I want to talk about the Bucks, who are in an interesting spot. I really like that they brought back Chris Middleton and Brook Lopez. They brought back Jay Crowder, but we haven't seen them do much else outside of that. I don't think they've made any other additions, if I'm remembering correctly. I don't think
you said the Bucks.
Yeah, I don't think the Bucks have made any additions.
I got the free agent team tracker up. Let me pull it up real quick. I don't think
it's just been Lopez, Middleton.
They did lose Ingles and Carter, who were two pretty good bench players for them. So.
They did lose some guys. So if anything, I don't want to call them losers because they brought back their guys, which I think was integral. So I don't think they're winners either because they kind of maintain the status quo. And I do believe they'll still be championship contenders this upcoming season, but I think you have to add more. I think Boston is pretty clearly, in my opinion, at this moment, the best team in the Eastern Conference.
I agree.
Kristaps Porzingis, I think that helps a lot. If Miami adds Dame too, like
I think it's Boston and Miami if Dame comes.
Yeah, like you have to do something if you're the Bucks. I think you can compete with those teams, but your core is getting older. I just don't know. I don't really know where they go from here because they lost some pieces. They did keep the group together and they brought a new head coach, so maybe that makes a difference. You've still got Giannis, who's one of the best players in the world, so you're going to be a championship contender regardless. But I don't know. I would like to see them shore up their roster a little bit more because of, I like a lot what Boston has done this offseason with bringing in Kristaps Porzingis. Losing Marcus Smart hurts a bit, but I think overall they've had a pretty good offseason. And if Miami adds Dame, you've got to do something because they just beat you without Dame.
Back to Dallas real quick, because you mentioned the Celtics. If the Mavericks can bring in Grant Williams, their offseason turns to winners for me.
I do like Grant Williams.
Or PJ Washington. If they can get one of those guys to plug into the four, I think they become winners. I don't know how they do it, but
yeah, it would have to be a sign and trade. But I don't know if there's anybody on the Dallas roster that the Celtics really want. Like, do you want Reggie Bullock's money? I guess he's fine. If you're going to lose Grant for nothing, like maybe you just take on Reggie Bullock. Well, I think so on the last year of his deal, I believe. So that's not the worst.
It could always be a three. They can always 3-team that too.
That's true. You could also do something like that. So. Yeah, Grant Williams is a name that has been linked to them for a while. I don't know if it's still,
he seems like a Buck low-key too. I don't know how they would do it either, but
yeah, I don't know if the Celtics would be willing to help the Bucks get Grant Williams. So,
but he just seems like someone that could see in a Bucks uniform. I don't know. I just see it.
He could help them out a good bit, but yeah, the Bucks are an interesting team. And the last one we have is the Raptors. The reason they're on here is because I think letting Fred VanVleet go I think they should start from the beginning. Like we've talked about, the Raptors, they need to rebuild. I think you should trade Siakam and everybody. I think Jakob Poeltl's on a fine contract. Like $20 million a year is not bad for Poeltl, but at the same time,
he knows I disagree with that. But
Ryan is a Jakob Poeltl hater. I don't know what's up with
I'm not a hater, bro. He's just not a $20 million a year player, man.
Maybe not in a few years ago, but I think at this point, like $20 million that's not that much in the NBA. I feel like at this point, but I like the idea of bringing back Poeltl if you were trying to compete, but you're not anymore. So
yeah, I agree with that.
Or they're trying to, but. They also brought in Dennis Schroeder, who I think is fine. But right now, you lost Fred VanVleet for Dennis Schroeder. You kept Jakob Poeltl, but you kind of just maintained what you were. I mean, you brought in Jalen McDaniels, who's good. But you kind of just maintained what you were. And if anything, I think you got worse. And you didn't make the playoffs this past year. So, what are you doing? I don't know. It's a weird situation. Also, I want to note the fact that they could have traded Fred VanVleet probably for something at the deadline, but they held on to him and let him walk. So this is something the Raptors do a lot, and it bothers me because there have been so many opportunities where they could have traded DeMar, players. Bro. Well, I mean, they traded DeMar for Kawhi Leonard.
I know, but you know what I mean. It's just like it feels like they hold on to these players for a long time. Like I cannot like it almost felt like that was going to happen with Lowry too. Like that.
I mean, it kind of did. Like they could have theoretically. There was the rumors that they could have.
For the longest time.
Yeah, there was rumors that they could have maybe gotten Maxey or Hero or someone from either the Heat or the Sixers, and instead they got I don't think they got any. They got Precious Achiuwa, I think, was the only player they got in that deal. So the Raptors do that a lot. I just hope they don't make the same mistake with Siakam. I hope they trade him before he potentially walks for nothing in this offseason. Get the rebuild starting. Same thing with OG Anunoby. Trade him before he potentially walks for nothing while he's still incredibly valuable. I don't know. I just want to note that with the Raptors. So I had them under interesting teams there. And yeah, we can now wrap up with the signings so far with some of our underrated signings. I know we talked about this a little bit. Do you have anyone in particular you want to go with? Or, I mean, I can go ahead and start with a couple.
You go ahead and go first. I'm going to scroll through my list.
Okay. First one is Kuzma to the Wizards. It's a weird fit. We all kind of thought Kuzma was going to leave the Wizards, but he ends up staying there in Washington. I think it's fine. You're trying to do this rebuilding thing, but Kuzma's not going to raise you out of the gutter of the Eastern Conference to a fringe playoff team and ruin your draft pick or anything. I still think the Wizards are pretty comfortably one of the worst teams in the Eastern Conference. And also his contract is really tradable. I think he got $25 million a year for Kuz, which is fine. That's fine value for Kuzma. He's getting paid less than a multitude of guys
bro.
now.
He's almost making the same money as Jakob Poeltl. That's insane.
You're a Jakob Poeltl hater. You don't watch enough Jakob Poeltl ball, but Kuzma's fun. I like him over there in Washington. And, if you decide that, hey, we don't want to keep him around because we want to go more into this rebuild, that's such a tradable contract. And now with this, you can get something for Kyle Kuzma as an asset. Like that way you don't lose him for nothing. We thought he might go to like the Pacers. He might go to the Kings, like a couple different locations. So I like the idea of bringing him back. You can trade him still, and he's a fine player. Like worst case, you just keep him around. He's not that old. He's what, like 27, probably 26.
Yeah, he was kind of an old drafty, but yeah.
He's 27, so he's not super old. Like if in 5 years you're trying to compete and you've kept Kuz around the whole time, like he's 32. It's not that big of a deal. So yeah, I mean, I like the idea of keeping Kuz on that team for a decent contract, in my opinion.
We've talked about a ton of these signings. I'm like scrolling through trying to find one that I got one for you. I'm going to Trey Lyles back to the Kings, man, because I think I might have mentioned this in our free agent preview. And also, while we're talking about the Kings, I'm so butchering his last name, but Sasha, is it Venchkev? How do you say Vench?
I don't know how yet to pronounce his name.
We'll just go Sasha. That's his first name, right? Sasha?
I believe so, yeah.
I believe that's his name. If I'm totally butchering this Kings fans, I'm so sorry. Yeah, it's Sasha. Hopefully that's how you pronounce it. But
Vezenkov, perhaps?
Vezenkov. We'll go Vezenkov, whatever. Vezenkov. I don't know. But I do really like what the Kings did on the wing. Like, I think Trey Lyles is a very underrated player. I know he kind of has this label as like a bust because he was a very highly touted draft pick and then just didn't pan out for Denver. Denver was where he got drafted, right?
Yeah, he was over there in.
He was picked pretty high too, wasn't he? I don't remember.
Trey Lyles was drafted at the 12th pick, so it was a lot. Oh no, he was drafted the Jazz, and then he was drafted by the Jazz, traded to the Nuggets. That's what it was.
Was he a part of the Donovan Mitchell trade? No, that was way before. Never mind. That was
he was part of the Donovan Mitchell trade because the Nuggets traded that pick to the Jazz for Trey Lyles.
Okay, I wasn't sure if the timeline matched it, but anyways, I really like the Trey Lyles pick.
Some combination of assets, including Trey Lyles.
Yeah, because I just think that he played some really good minutes for the Kings, and he was a really good stretch 4, small ball 5 kind of player. And I think that would have been a player that a lot of teams in hindsight could have really used. So I think it's really awesome that they kept him, and I think that's a good match for Sabonis. It gives you a different look at like the same position. And then with Sasha, I mean, I'm not super familiar with this game. I know you said he's like baby Luka coming from the EuroLeague.
No, that's Micic.
I mean, Micic. Oh, what's Sasha like then? What's the scouting?
So Sasha is,
because I know he was the EuroLeague MVP too.
He's an elite. He's like an elite shooter. Basically, I think there was this viral video from a few years ago where it was him like cooking people without dribbling. Like it was crazy. Like he's one of the best shooters in the entire EuroLeague. If I'm thinking of the right player, what I really know is that he's a knockdown shooter, and you add more shooting to a team that could always, that thrives on shooting. I like the idea a lot of adding him to that team. It was a very unexpected signing. Like, I mean, obviously he wasn't
any shooting wing to pair with De'Aaron Fox and Sabonis is a W. You ask me. Mm-hmm. That's why I like Trey Lyles there too, and
he's 6'9" too, so he's bigger. If you wanted to put him at the 4, although I don't know how good the defense is, but I believe he's 6'9", so he's a bit bigger too. Which is
tell me they got a better shooting Mirotic. Is that what you're saying?
Was it?
He was a pretty good shooter too.
Yeah. What was the last time Mirotic was in the league? Now I'm trying to remember when.
I mean, he punched Bobby Portis, and then I think he played for the Pelicans for a little bit.
Yeah, he was. When was the last time Mirotic was in the league?
And he went back. Then I remember some Spain team gave him a bag.
I think he's at Real Madrid at this point. Wow, 2019 was the last time he played in the league. That feels like forever.
He got a fat contract though. I don't remember what it was, but Madrid.
He did.
We were like, what? They gave him what? But yeah, man. I mean, I know you and I were both kind of on the Harrison Barnes thing. Like Harrison Barnes is a great player, and it's not like he's getting crazy overpaid, but it's just like maybe they could have somehow upgraded the position. But I mean, it's not gonna crush them. They're not gonna follow the playoff race because they signed Harrison Barnes back. But I don't know.
It's a little bit of money. We thought maybe they would make a splash. Like that was kind of something that we thought was a possibility, maybe with like stealing away Jeremy Grant or getting Kyle Kuzma or something like that. I think Barnes is good. 18 mil is a little bit rich, in my opinion, for Harrison Barnes at this point in his career. But again, I don't think it hurts them. You kind of just keep what you have already. And that is valuable to keep that continuity for a team that just made a big splash in the Western Conference this past season. So I know we're kind of getting up here in this episode. We can go ahead and kind of run through some more of these underrated signings.
Yeah, I got one more I'll throw in real quick.
Okay.
Just because I have it pulled in front of me. It's Josh Richardson to the Heat. I really like.
Yep. That was what I was going to mention too.
I think it's really cool that they brought him back. And it'll be interesting to see what kind of role he has over there. Like, are they going to try to get the nostalgia and have him do some more ball handling like he did back when them and the Sixers played in that playoff series way back when? the Justin Anderson, Dwayne Wade battle.
Of course, the one we all remember.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of role they have there. And I know Heat fans are pretty happy about it for like a relatively cheap deal. And I mean, he gives them some more depth on the wing, which they, losing Strus, potentially losing Hero.
They lost Gabe. Yeah, I mean, they lost some of that shooting, and also Richardson's defense is really solid too. Like, I think I even talked about him as one of my most underrated free agents in our free agent preview video.
Mm-hmm.
So
I love you mention that.
Yeah, I love Josh Richardson a lot for this Heat team. I think he's a perfect fit for what they're trying to build over there.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, like you said, with losing Strus, it kind of helps shore up that position. And I think he could replicate a lot of the same things that Max Strus did with being a shooter playing off of Jimmy, maybe Damian Lillard, Bam Adebayo over there in Miami. So yeah, I agree. A couple of ones I'm going to give a shout out to is Shake Milton to the Wolves. I like that signing.
I 100% agree, man. I think him getting freed is going to be – I think a lot of Sixers fans kind of got on Shake Milton for no reason. I think Doc just misused him awfully. And I think in a new environment with a good role, I think a lot of Sixers fans are like, why wasn't Shake this good in Philly? And it's just like, he was that good in Philly. He just never really got the shot, and it was inconsistent playing time. And I agree with you, man. That's a great pickup for them. I'm really rooting for Shake. I love him.
It gives them an offensive punch off the bench, which they've kind of needed at like that 1-2 spot. He's kind of what I think they're looking for from Jalen Noel. I think you could get a bit more of that from Shake Milton. And yeah, I mean, I just like that pickup a lot. I think you talked about him as one of your most like underrated or like kind of some free agents that could fly under the radar that you liked a lot for some teams. So I like that fit a lot there for Minnesota, who also I think has had a really good offseason so far. Bringing him in, you got Nickeil Alexander-Walker. I think Troy Brown's solid, kind of being your Taurean Prince replacement. Naz Reid, you keep him on the roster. So I think they've done a good job. Also, I like the Russ deal a lot back to the Clippers. I think he's getting like $4 million a year. I think that's great value for what he did for your team this past season. And, you don't handicap yourself too much. It's not a lot of financial commitment to Russ. If he has a down season this upcoming year, then it's $4 million. Of course, as a massive Russ fan, I'm rooting for him. And he was a big reason why you kept that series competitive against the Suns. Absolutely, even though Kawhi and Paul George went down. Like, the defense was good, the playmaking. Yeah, he shot pretty well. That first game was horrific, but he made like the game-winning defensive play at the end. But Russ just provides something that I think the Clippers really need. And so I like that, bringing him in a lot, even if you don't get a James Harden or, Damian Lillard, which I don't think they're going to end up getting either of those guys. If you ask me, you have a good point guard over there in Russ. So yeah, those are some of our most underrated signings. A couple of other big ones that we really didn't touch on are like Draymond Green going back to the Warriors. Shout out to him. I think that's a good pickup for the Warriors. They had to keep Draymond Green. If you didn't, you would have been in a lot of trouble over there. So I think you had to. We did touch on D'Lo going back to the Lakers. The Knicks get DiVincenzo. Try and make sure we didn't miss anything real quick. As
that's kind of an S signing for me, man. It's cool. He'll fit the tip system. We'll get the Villanova fanboys all happy, but it's kind of an S signing for me. It's all right.
I think it's solid. My guy Dennis Smith Jr. gets picked up by the Nets. That was one of the players I talked about. I like the idea of bringing a guy like him in. A hard-nosed defender. The shot is rough, but the defense is good. Pelicans brought back Herb Jones. We did touch on that a little bit earlier on. I like Kobe White a lot for $11 million a year back to the Bulls. He was really good this past season, and they need it. They need, some guard production with Lonzo Ball situation. They also brought in Javon Carter, so now they've got a couple of guards. Maybe they don't intend on bringing back Ayo Dosunmu, who wasn't great this past season, so we'll see there. I think that's pretty much all the big moves. I think we've kind of went through everything. I just scrolled past a huge wall of like Sun signings that they made, so yeah, I think, Kevin Love and Thomas Bryant shoring up the front court over there in Miami, like that for them. Yeah, I think that's kind of overall what we've seen from free agency so far. But there are some good free agents still remaining. We can do this kind of quickly, just touch on some and maybe some potential locations. Christian Wood is probably the number one guy that people are thinking about. I don't know where he's going to end up. And that's something we talked about too in our last episode. We were trying to pick locations for Wood to end up. I said Miami, but they signed Thomas Bryant. So I don't know if that's still a possibility over there.
And they got Love back.
So they shored up that front court a little bit. I really don't know where Christian Wood goes. Maybe he does end up going back to Dallas, but at the same time, like with how that situation ended and how his season went, I just don't see it happening. But there's really like no cap space left. So he's probably just going to have to take like a smaller term deal with somebody. I don't really know where he goes.
I don't know either, man. I don't think
I still think the Sixers are a possibility if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
I still think they're a possibility. I
I
think
mean,
I
like I said,
mentioned them.
we're really short on wings, and we haven't used our taxpayer
Well,
exception
not
yet.
wing big, but
I mean, he played the 4 for us, you know, like that's what I mean. Like we don't have, other than PJ Tucker and Tobias, we don't have anyone that can play the 3 and the 4. Like I wouldn't really put him at the 3, but you know what I mean. We don't have anyone. We could slide one of those other guys to the 3 and play the 4. And right now we don't have a backup 5 either because Paul Reed's a free agent still.
Yeah, I guess by virtue of bringing in Christian Wood, who can play like the 4-5, you can slide some of those other guys over to more wing spots.
Exactly,
so
that's kind of what
like,
I'm with that.
Yeah, it kind of like technically, I guess, shores up your wing depth there. So
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Christian Wood is in an interesting spot at the moment. We'll see where he lands. Kelly Oubre, speaking of wings, a lot of cap space is drying up. Oubre might be a cheap deal. I would like him for the Sixers again if you're looking for a wing type of player. I would love Kelly Oubre over there. I think there's a number of teams that could go after him. He was really solid this past year. The shooting splits weren't great, but you're not going to need Kelly Oubre in a number one creation role like he was at times in Charlotte with LaMelo hurt throughout the season. So I don't think he goes back to Charlotte, especially with the Hornets picking up Miles Bridges' or they offered him the qualifying offer. He comes back to Charlotte over there. So between Gordon Hayward, Brandon Miller, there's no reason for Kelly Oubre to come back. So Torrey Craig is another player again for the Sixers. If they're looking for somebody, he fits kind of that 3, that 4 spot role. I still think he could go back to the Suns. I think they should still look into trying to bring him back. Although, like we talked about, he might make a bit too much money to go back to Phoenix. TJ Warren is out there as a scoring wing. PJ Washington is a restricted free agent, and I would like him a lot for a number of teams.
Real quick, Torrey Craig, a reunion of Torrey Craig in Denver would be a really good fit, I feel like.
Ooh, I would like Torrey Craig in Denver.
That's where he was before Phoenix, but I think I like that reunion a lot.
That's a good shout. I like that one. Yeah, I'm kind of surprised he's still in the market. I thought teams would kind of rush to pick him up.
He's kind of looking at Bruce Brown. It was like, I kind of played that role for the Suns last year in a way. And he's trying, he's not getting $22 million, but I think he's probably trying to push for double figure. You know what I mean? Like double digits in the millions. He's probably just not getting that.
Yeah, probably not. He'll probably get like a $5 million or a little bit over that, probably something like that. I mean, if I'm him, I'm saying, hey, look at some of the contracts that other guys are getting. Like, can I get something similar to that? So we'll see what happens with Torrey Craig. There is Grant Williams, who we talked about a little bit. Mason Plumlee, who was solid as a backup big for the Clippers. Maybe he just goes back there. Paul Reed for the Sixers is a restricted free agent. I think they just bring him back probably on a small-time deal.
I could see 2 for 12 for Paul Reed, something like that.
Yeah, and I think that's solid value for Paul Reed, who I think has been a decent enough. He's been serviceable as a backup big for Embiid. You probably want a better one if possible, but Paul Reed's fine. Matisse Thybulle is over there as a restricted free agent. I think it's more likely that the Blazers bring him back now that they're kind of going with this youth movement, most likely. Malik Beasley is out there as a free agent as well, I believe. He hasn't been signed by anyone yet. He feels like someone that would have slipped under the radar.
I think he's probably demanding more money too, because before the Lakers kind of benched him, he was one of the better 3-point shooters in the NBA. Like on the Jazz, was he shooting 43% for the Jazz or something like that? Like something crazy.
Yeah, the Lakers have this weird thing that happens that when they trade for players that can shoot, they forget how to shoot. So I kind of feel like Malik
Danny
Green will. Yeah, Danny Green in the finals. He shot 35.3% from the Lakers, which is fine. I guess this was kind of more of a down year for him. He shot 35.9% from 3 as a Jazz.
Oh, really? I thought he was shooting. Was he shooting high from the field? I swear he was shooting at a nuclear clip.
No, under 40% from the field.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Which makes sense because
maybe he just has some high volume games, but I just swear before he got traded.
He does that. He's, again, a streaky player, where there'll be some games where he knocks down 7 threes, and then there'll be some games where he goes 0 for 8. I mean, with the Timberwolves, he shot 37.7%, 39.9%. He shot 42.6% in 14 games for them in 2020. He's had some good seasons, and again, he's going to be inconsistent, but I feel like some team will pick him up. If you can get a guy who could theoretically shoot, you might as well. And I would assume he was out there as a restricted free agent as well. So yeah, those are kind of some of the biggest names still out there on the market. And to round things out, we'll quickly talk about some of the extensions that players got so far, because players in the 2020 draft are now eligible for extensions. We saw a lot of guys get those. Tyrese Haliburton, 5 years, $260. LaMelo, 5 years, $260. Desmond Bane, 5 years, $207. Sabonis, who wasn't in that draft class, but also hit his extension time, 5 years, $217 million. Kristaps Porzingis got 2 years, $60 million from the Celtics. Two names that we're still looking for to probably get extensions are Anthony Edwards and Jaylen Brown, who will probably get some at some point this offseason. Any thoughts on those extensions? I mean, I think I like Halliburton's a lot. If you're the Pacers,
he's probably my favorite. Out of the ones that are above $200 million, I think he's my favorite.
I agree. You secure him for, the next 5 years. He's your franchise cornerstone at this point. He was an all-star already. You should secure him to that bag. I like that a lot for sure. LaMelo's, I also think if he can stay healthy, that's good. The health is
He's
a
already been
major
an all-star
concern,
too.
though. Yeah, he's also been an all-star. The health is a major concern with LaMelo. So if he can stay healthy, I think that's a fine contract for him. We'll see if he's able to. Desmond Baines is a little high, like over 40 mil a year for Bane.
I think that's pretty dang high. Desmond Bane, I'm not gonna lie.
It is, but at the same time, like you secure your core, and with the way the contracts are going to keep getting higher and higher, like, I mean, I'd rather sign Desmond Bane like for about 40 mil a year for 5 years than Fred VanVleet for 40 million at this point. So
I think most teams would. I agree with that.
Yeah, so I think Bane is really good. He's never been an all-star, but I think he would have had a shot to be one if he stayed healthy this past season, at least. I mean, it's tough as a guard. So
I think my only quit with Desmond Bane is I feel like when Ja missed some time down the stretch, I don't think Bane was really stepping up as much as people thought. Like, I know this is coming from a degenerate gambler standpoint, but there were so many times where Desmond Bane's line would be at like 20 points with Ja out, and my friends and I would be like, that seems so free. Like, what do you mean his line's at 20 points? Or he was at like 2.5 threes. I'm like, what? And then there'd be so many times where he would just like either get it or like miss it completely. And I was just like, and by get, I mean like barely get it. But it's just like, I thought he should have been averaging almost 30 points a game with when Ja was out based on like his volume.
I don't know about 30.
But you know what I mean? But like not putting up barely 20. I'm talking about like high 20s consistent. Like, you know what I mean?
I know. I see what you're saying, but at the same time, like, he's young, and I think he's a great player to have next to Ja with the shooting because of Ja's ability to attack the paint. And at the very minimum, like with this deal, you secure your big three of Jaren Jackson, Ja Morant, and Desmond Bane for like 5 years or so now. Like, you've got them all.
What contract is Triple J under right now?
Triple J's he signed his extension.
He's not making 40 mil, is he? Please tell me he's not making 40 mil.
I think 40 mil is fine for Jaren Jackson if he can stay healthy. The health thing is a concern sometimes with him. I looked up his stats, not his contract. I just kind of want an autopilot there. No, it's about 26, 27 mil a year.
Okay. I've seen that. I rock with, man. If Desmond Bane was getting 30 mil, I'm like, yes.
And the good thing also with Jaren's contract is it's descending. So he made 27 mil, or he's going to make 27 mil, then 25, and 25, 26, he'll be making 23 mil, which is a steal for Jaren Jackson.
I agree. Oh, 100%. Yeah, that's a great contract.
Yeah. So now you've got him, Ja, and Bane under contract for at least the next 3 years. So I like the deal a lot in terms of that. The money is a little bit much, but again, I also feel like I have to calibrate myself to understand like the scope of these deals as the new CBA and like the money keeps rising up with the league. So Sabonis' 5-year contract for 217 mil. I saw a lot of people hating that one. Sabonis is really good. And I think with the Kings, you've got to kind of keep him in town for a little bit, give him that extension. So I don't hate that.
Is he a free agent next season?
Yeah, he's a free agent next season.
Okay, with that being said, I don't hate it as much. I do think the money's a lot, but I mean, I don't know, man. And
better to sign him now than if you could get more money in free agency next year.
I agree.
So, and yeah, right now we're just kind of waiting on Anthony Edwards, who I'm sure signed that.
He'll probably get that 5,262, don't you think?
Yeah, he'll get that 5,260. He'll get the max for an all-star player at this age.
And isn't Jaylen Brown on the table for like a $300-something million contract?
Yeah, I think it's 295 mil.
Lord have mercy. Jaylen Brown's awesome, but dude, $60 million for
Jaylen. It's a lot. It's a lot. I can't lie.
It is. We as an NBA community kind of clowned the Celtics for giving Jaylen Brown like 40 mil a year. And looking back on that, we're like, Jaylen Brown's probably worth $40 million a year, But 60 mil, man, dude, that's how much Kristaps getting in both years. And he's an all-star player. It's just crazy, man.
Yeah, Kristaps got that 2-year, $60 million contract extension, which we knew was coming when he got traded over to traded from Washington to Boston. Their intention was to extend him, and I like that a lot. So yeah, I think that's everything for free agency so far. I'm trying to think if there's any other like trades or anything. Like, there wasn't significant stuff. Like, the Kings do pick up Chris Duarte, like we talked about them trading him. The Kings do pick him up. That's one trade I want to note. But I feel like other than that, it was just like the Rockets doing a bunch of weird stuff over and over again. The couple of Thunder trades that we mentioned. Yeah, so that's kind of our free agent recap so far. If there's any moves made, so we're recording this on Sunday. It's 11 p.m. right now. So if anything happens, this episode's going to come out on Monday, hopefully around like noon or a little bit like early afternoonish. So if anything's happened between now and then, that's
Dame is totally getting traded tomorrow morning. I hope you know that. In this episode,
no,
and we're just gonna cut out that part of the episode.
I don't think so. I think it's gonna take a little bit for Dame, but it would be it would be very on brand for us.
I do want you to say, if you're editing this and Dame does get traded, I want you to put that clip of me what I just said at the beginning.
Okay, I'll put that clip at the beginning. But yeah, so I think that's everything from us. I would appreciate y'all for tuning in. As always, please leave a like if you enjoyed the video. Please subscribe to the channel. Comment down below who's been your biggest winner of free agency so far. You know, who are your favorite signings. Also, let us know how you think your team did. If you had to grade your favorite team, what would you say they've gotten so far? Also, if you're watching on YouTube, go over to the audio platform and download the podcast or give us 5 stars or something. Follow us on there on Spotify and Apple. Hopefully it's finally on Apple. Like, I've been having trouble getting it on Apple for some reason. It's been kind of hard to work with, but I know it's at least on Spotify. And if you're listening on audio, listening on Spotify, come over to the YouTube channel, subscribe, like the video, just show some love over here too.
Come watch our beautiful faces.
Yeah, come help boost us up. Also on the YouTube channel, like, we're going to be dropping other like random videos and stuff like that you probably won't see on audio platforms. So definitely make sure to come check us out over here. So with that being said, I guess we're going to go ahead and wrap up right before the hour 30 mark. Ryan, do you have anything in particular you want to wrap up with?
Give me your 3 favorite songs off Pink Tape.
My 3 favorite songs off Pink Tape. Well, we talked about this before. I mentioned like 4 or 5. For those of you that don't know, Pink Tape is the new Lil Uzi album that came out that we've both been listening to a good bit. I'd probably say Flood to the Face, Amped, and I'm between a few.
Don't say Bien, bro. You're going to have people coming for you. I know you like that song.
I do kind of like that song. I kind of like some of like the rock and metal stuff.
I like Werewolf too, man. People hating on Werewolf. That song's fire, bro.
I really like Days Come and Go. I really like that one. I'm gonna go with that one as my 3rd one.
I'll throw in Nakamura. I love the when he's doing the like that whole part. Like, I just love that part, man. I've been getting back into running. Well, I'm not back into. I've never been into running actually, but the last couple of days I ran. I know this is gonna sound awful to some people that like run for like fun or for competition or whatever, but I ran a mile a couple days ago and I did 2 today, and I was really happy with that. So that was awesome. But I've been being fueled by that song and then the song A with Travis Scott, which a lot of people are hating on that song. If you're working out or doing something, it is so freaking hype, man. I don't care what you're saying. It's having Uzi scream "Ay!" in your ear like nonstop while you're running. It's pretty uplifting. So I'd go with those 2 and then probably Flood in the Face.
Yeah.
My sleeper pick is Werewolf, just because I like Bring Me the Horizon. I think it's hilarious to have Uzi on a song with them, but
yeah. So let us know if y'all listen to the album. Let us know in the comment section below what y'all thought. And yeah, we appreciate y'all tuning in as always. From me and Ryan, this has been the 2-man game. We'll see y'all in a few days to probably recap more free agency. You know, talk about a little bit going into Summer League. It starts tomorrow night, which is super
which
exciting.
Connor's going to.
Yeah, I'm going to be at Summer League for Vegas. So if any of y'all are there at Summer League, let us know. And, you know, I'll definitely
don't let me know. I won't be there.
Let Ryan know.
And I'll let Connor know.
Let Ryan know to let me know that you'll be there. And then I'll let him know to let you know that we'll meet up at some point. So definitely let us know on that one. And yeah, we appreciate y'all tuning in. We'll see you in a few days. Take care.